The doctor is in on KPEL. Get well, Acadiana, with Dr. Kevin.
Welcome back to Get Well, Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. I am Dr. Kevin Linderman. I'm here with my co-host, Brandon Como. Brandon, how are you today?
Doing well.
Very good. So I have so much to cover that we didn't get to last week on our discussion on diabetes. But, before we did, Brandon, everything's going good with you today?
Everything's going really well.
I guess after being on Moon's show all week, it's probably nice to have a little break from politics for a while, I'm sure.
Man. It is a little break in sanity, I guess.
And by the way, for everybody listening, Brandon has his own show on weekdays called Offsides. It's the best show. It's at 4, right? On weekdays, Brandon.
Yes,
and I love that show.
Thank
I always listen to it between patients. It's really funny. You guys have me cracking up there from my office. But anyway, thanks for joining us today on Get Well Acadiana, the show that can change what your health looks like in the next 20 or even 30 years in the future. And speaking of that, I wanted to tell you a quick story before we get started today. And I call that story The Tale of Two Paths. And I want you to imagine in your mind one lady that's, say, 70 years old, yet she's gardening, she's playing tennis twice a week, she's shopping with her friends, playing with her grandkids in the yard. She's literally having the time of her life. And imagine another lady that's 70 years old that has just been moved to a nursing facility because she can no longer care for herself. She can't even do the most basic activities of daily living, and she has multiple disease processes going on. And, the truth is that she's in real trouble. Now, both are 70. So it's not an age thing like most people blame away their symptoms as being, I have people in their 50s saying they have symptoms because they're getting old. The truth is the pathway for these two ladies, the pathway that their health went on parted at some point in their life. Their health pathway forked. Their road to their future forked. One went one way, and one went the other. Now, that fork in the road for their health didn't happen at 70 years old. It didn't even happen at 60 or even at 50. What they chose to do in their 30s and 40s led them to the pathway where they ended up. And that fork in the road, what fork are you going to be on? Where are you going to end up? What are you doing now, and what will you be doing in the next couple of years to determine where you're going to be at 50, 60, 70 years old? Where are you headed with your health? So thanks for joining us today. I'm Dr. Kevin Linderman. I'm the Senior Vice President for the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We're now Acadiana's most successful functional medicine and wellness institutes. And functional medicine, which we'll be discussing on this show week after week, is really the future of healthcare. So at Bryant Wellness Institutes, we're on the cutting edge of natural treatments for really some of today's worst health problems. I'm a wellness practitioner, a nationally certified weight loss coach, a chiropractic physician, a functional medicine specialist, a certified dry needling practitioner, and I also do tons of corporate wellness advisory work as well. I've been fortunate enough to be rated in the top 10% of wellness practitioners in the country by DSE Enterprises. But the reason that I do all of this is because my purpose is to help as many people as possible live a better life using totally natural, drug-free solutions. The truth is, life is too short to be sick and suffer. Brandon, we're only given a certain number of days here on the planet. Mm-hmm. And to spend those days sick and broken down and not feeling your best that's such a shame to me, especially when natural solutions exist. I've been on a 20-year quest to solve complicated health problems using drug-free solutions, and we're amazingly successful at that. We're able to help really an amazing array of complicated health problems using some of these new technologies that I'll be discussing on the show every week. So for you listeners out there, you can email me your health questions, and we're going to discuss them on the show. My email is drkevin@bryantwellnessinstitutes.com. That's drkevin@bryantwellnessinstitutes.com. And so we have locations in Lafayette, Broussard, and New Iberia, but we really pride ourselves on our reputation for solving patients' problems for good. And our promise is to always, always listen to our patients with concern and treat them with compassion. And in my opinion, that's something that we could use a lot more of in the healthcare industry. Everybody just wants to be listened to with some concern and treated with some compassion. And, functional medicine is really the future of healthcare. And we're really starting to figure this thing out. We're starting to know how to affect the cells at their most basic level and change their function using totally natural solutions. And just like all other healthcare fields are making strides, we're making strides in the field of wellness and functional medicine every day. And this is so important because, like I talk about every week, America now takes 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs on planet Earth, yet we are only 4% of the world's population. So 50% of the drugs are taken by 4% of the people on the planet. We have more doctors and hospitals than any other country in the world, and we spend more on healthcare than most of the developed world combined, yet China and Cambodia lives longer than we do. They have a longer life expectancy than we do in the United States of America. Now listen, they live in villages that are sometimes miles away from hospitals. Sometimes their water is not the cleanest, and they outlive us. I mean, to me, that's pretty astonishing. And so if the answer to great health was doctors, drugs, hospitals, and money, wouldn't we be like the healthiest country in the world? Yet we're far from it. So, Brandon, we can do much better than that. I mean, we can do better in America. Now, I have an amazing show today. I want to continue our discussion on diabetes. Now, if you're listening and you know someone that has diabetes, I want you to text or call them right now and tell them to tune in because it could really change their life. It could actually change their fork in the road that their health pathway is headed on, like we talked about at the beginning of the show. Now, if you're listening and you don't have diabetes, you still need to stay tuned into the show because 1/3 of Americans have prediabetes and don't even know it. Meaning if they don't reverse the direction they're headed, they're going to have full-blown diabetes soon. And 50% of Americans over 65 have prediabetes. So if you're 65 and over, either you or your spouse has prediabetes. And that's something that you want to pay attention to because 70% of the people with diabetes develop what's called diabetic neuropathy, which means they have tingling and burning in their feet, which is just a terrible thing to have. I mean, it really can be a disabling thing once you develop this diabetic neuropathy. And what happens, 60% of leg amputations are from diabetes that's left to run rampant. And so it's also the leading cause of kidney failure and the leading cause of blindness. So guys, this is important. Now, like I proved to you last week, we're not even looking at the right parameters when it comes to diabetes. We're not even focusing on the right numbers. And we're going to get into that a little bit more detail on today's show. And we'll continue last week's discussion on ways we can solve your diabetes for good. But here's the process your body goes through in the development of diabetes. Because, Brandon, one of the things that always amazes me is that people don't even know what they have. Mm-hmm. Like they'll have a disease and they've never even done even a simple Google search on it, I mean, if somebody told me, hey, you have disease A, B, and C, I would absolutely go home and try to research, and I would want to know what I had. Mm-hmm. I would want to know what the problem was. But what happens with people that get diabetes, the first thing is people eat too much sugar and too many carbohydrates. And what happens, the body starts to overproduce insulin for an extended period of time, so the cells start to become resistant to their insulin. Insulin's job, like we discussed last week, is to put the sugar inside the cell for energy and for use. And when that stops happening, the body, the cells will send signals to the body that they're starving and they need more sugar. So these people will start to crave even more sugar. So they start to get this downward spiral of sugar cravings, insulin resistance, more sugar cravings, more insulin resistance. And as they begin to get severe sugar cravings, that compounds the problem more and more. So then what happens is all this extra glucose builds up in their blood and begins to spill over in the kidneys. And we can see this when we do a urinalysis on them, is they'll have glucose in their urine. And then as the body begins to urinate more frequently, the blood starts to get thicker. And then the patients will notice they're getting thirsty more often, like maybe they wake up at night really, really thirsty. And as the blood begins to get thicker and thicker, circulation begins to stop. And then they get the extremities that have wounds that won't heal, and their feet start to stay cold. Then they start to develop diabetic neuropathy, which again is the burning and tingling in the feet and the legs. As the tiny arteries in the eyes begin to get affected, their vision begins to fail. And then it can lead to even all the way to blindness. And since the cells are still not getting their glucose, they end up starting to get tired often. And this just progresses more and more, and it's a downward spiral. The limbs begin to get really compromised, and then sometimes they need to be amputated to prevent gangrene. And by the time the blindness becomes very prevalent, the process continues to get worse and worse. And the patient usually die from what we call a comorbid disease process, which meaning the diabetes doesn't kill them, but they end up with some sort of an infection in the lower limbs or pneumonia, or they usually end up with some other comorbid disease process that ends up being a really serious thing. So this is something that you want to pay attention to. People think that if they're just managing their blood sugar numbers with their medication, then everything is fine. Guys, that's not fine. We need to do much better than that. That is basically a ticking time bomb waiting for way worse things to happen down the road. So I'm going to be hosting a free community workshop this Thursday, the 6th, at the Hilton Garden Inn in Lafayette. It's free to the public. I'm going to show you how to finally get to the underlying causes of your diabetes, and I'm going to show you simple things you can do at home to solve your diabetes for good. The workshop is called 4 Secrets to Beating Diabetes. You can call right now and register. We have a few seats left. So call my office and leave your name and number. It's 837-7174. That's 837-7174, and leave your name and number. Obviously, it's Saturday. My office is closed, but you'll hear me, you'll hear me on the machine. Leave your name and number, and that'll guarantee you a spot in the workshop. And as soon as our staff gets back to work Monday, they'll call you to give you a little more information on it and register your seat and to find out how many guests you're bringing. So it's 837-7174. Call and register. 4 Secrets to Beating Diabetes. You're listening to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Right after the break, I have some research on diabetes that will blow your mind. So stay tuned right after this short break.
Contact Bryant Wellness Institute at 837-7174.
Welcome back on this Saturday morning. We're continuing our discussion on diabetes today, and I really appreciate you joining us for the show. This is important, guys. You know, when it comes to diabetes, this is so rampant in America, and especially here in Louisiana. You know, Brandon, like we were talking about last week, I mean, we're one of the most overweight. I think, what did you say, we're the 8th?
Yeah, Lafayette, unfortunately, is the 8th fattest city in the United States.
That's amazing, man. And you know, it's no wonder. I mean, the average American now eats 180 pounds of sugar a year. You know, that's an industrial dumpster full.
Yeah.
And so it's just no wonder. And, you know, I'm sure that's the average. And, you know, some of the real healthy states like up north, Colorado, and that, I bet theirs is less, which means ours is probably more than 180 pounds, you know, as sugar per year. And so this is very, very important. And so the problem is we're focusing on blood sugar, and diabetes is a problem with insulin, not blood sugar. So we're not even really looking at all the parameters that we should be whenever it comes to the management or the treatment of diabetes. People think they're okay because their metformin is managing to keep their blood sugar numbers in a box they call normal, but that's not even really what we should be looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another area that I was curious about was blood pressure and getting your blood pressure numbers. Does blood pressure have anything to do with, you know, with developing diabetes later on?
It really doesn't. Okay. The reverse can be true. Like if you get really end-stage diabetes and your kidneys start to fail, that can make your blood pressure go up, but not the other way. Having your blood pressure checked is not going to tell you if you have diabetes or not. One of the main things that you can tell if you're if you could be developing some of these problems is you may have the inability to lose weight, or you know, you may have some weight problems. You get thirsty often. You crave sweets. You get a little dizzy after you eat, or you don't eat, or maybe you get sleepy after you eat. You know, all those are signs that your blood sugar in your body is just not doing really what it should be doing. You know, maybe you get tired after lunch, you know, that kind of thing.
So then let me ask you, because you mentioned one of those is thirst, a lot, you know, having a, always craving liquids. What if you're just not drinking enough water? Okay, is that something that if you're not getting enough water in your system, is that one of the things that can lead to diabetes?
Always drinking enough water is always important.
Of course.
And the formula that I always use for that on water is whatever your body weight is, drink half that amount of ounces of water a day. So like a 200-pound person should drink 100 ounces of water a day.
Okay.
And, good, clean, filtered water is always a great thing. Now, if you add something in like coffee, that's going to further dehydrate you, so you should add even more.
Right.
And, especially as much coffee as some of us drink. It started out, our coffees were little tiny coffee cups.
Yeah.
And, then we got the bigger one, and then the bigger one, and then the 32-ounce, and then we have a coffee cup with a shoulder strap on it,
No, I understand. And as a matter of fact, the past 3 weeks, I've maybe had 3 or 4 cups of coffee combined. Because I found it started to dehydrate me a little bit. So I wanted to put it back on a kind of like a treat on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kind of having it for fun. But I've tried to stay away from it for the most part because I felt it was starting to dehydrate me. Now, I did want to ask you about waters because for some of us, drinking that much water is a little bit harder than others. And the fact of, I don't like the taste of water as much. Yeah. But there's always alternatives out there, such as flavored waters and such. What are some of the good flavored waters maybe that you recommend, if any, and some that you would maybe say, hey, that's kind of like, false advertising. I'd stay away from this kind of, flavored water.
Great question. Sometimes I have patients tell me that, I just don't like the taste of water. And I always scratch my head on that one because, you're drinking the wrong water. Water should not have a flavor in it.
Okay, now, I loved water when I was playing football and I was just thirsty. But, man, I got to force myself to drink regular water. Now, I love flavored water, but that's why I ask.
The number one healthiest way you can do your water is just squeeze a lemon in it. That's the best. That's so good for you. It's even more healthy than just water by itself. So squeeze a little lemon in it. If you can get by with that, that's great.
Okay, so I got a question off of that before you continue. So is it true that you're putting, 3 squirts of lemon juice or however helps prevent kidney stones?
Sure. Yeah, that's really good.
I'd heard that.
Yeah. It alkalizes your body. Lemon juice has a lot of really good, take a good organic lemon, squeeze that in your water. It's really, really good for it. Okay. And I tell you the other thing about water, too, is a lot of this bottled water that we drink is, it's not much different than water out of your faucet.
Yeah.
It's not that much cleaner or that much less chemicals in it than what people think. And, plastics can create phthalates, which are one of the industrial chemicals we talked about last week that leads to diabetes. So we're kind of on that same subject. So, the best thing you could do is get you a really good home water filter and a stainless steel water bottle and fill that up every day and bring that. And that's what I do. And I went a little overboard at my house. I have a whole home water filtration system that filters all the water coming in the house.
Nice.
And then I have another reverse osmosis one under my sink that is our drinking water. So I went crazy on it, but you don't have to go to that extent. But just filter your water and fill up a water, like a stainless steel water bottle, and bring that with you. But the main thing is just watch your sugar intake. Man, if we could just do that one thing, we're overeating and starving our bodies of nutrients at the same time. And insulin's job in your body is to put sugar inside your cells for use. And so what happens, cells are designed to perform a function. A brain cell thinks, a muscle cell contracts, a stomach acid makes acid, so a saliva cell makes spit, and so on. Your cells are designed to produce something or to do something. And so those cells run off glucose just like your car runs off of gasoline. And so your cell walls are closed off to obviously to protect the cell. But that glucose has to get from the outside of the cell to inside the cell somehow. And insulin's job is as if it has a key. It opens a little door in the cell wall and it passes the glucose in the cell for use and then closes it back and shuts it. So the secret to treating diabetes is, why have the cells stopped using their insulin, and how can we get the cells to start using their insulin again? And the truth is, there are several things. There are several ways that we can do that. There are several things we can do to try to get your cells to work better and to start utilizing their insulin better. But here's the truth. It's not even being discussed. It's not even being looked into. And to think why the cells have stopped using their insulin and how can we get them to use their insulin better is not even in the realm of consideration whenever it comes to traditional health care. It's just glucose high, prescribe metformin, done, next. And we can do much better. We must do much better than that. You know, people's lives are at stake here. But listen, folks, it's up to you. You know, you can no longer rely on traditional, just whatever, you know, is told to you to take for medication to help with your health. That's not the way it works. So the truth is, most Americans, well, we're just too busy to worry about it. You know, most Americans have a real priority problem whenever it comes to their health. We're so worried about the kids and the job and the bills and the groceries and the gas and, you know, day-to-day activities that our health gets pushed to the back burner. We call that mommy and daddy syndrome. That means I take care of everything else under the sun and I put my health last. But let me ask you, can you take care of your house payment if you can't work or you lose your health? Can you drive the kids to baseball if you're sick? You know, can you even do what they need you to do if you lose your energy or, you know, if you lose your health? You know, can you lift your grandkids or play outside with them if you lose your health? So health should be number one on our priority list for the entire family because everything else depends on it. And so many times that's not the case as Americans. And so it always concerns me when I'm consulting a patient and they have no idea what's going on with them when they have diabetes. I'll ask them, I'll say, tell me a little bit about what you know about your diabetes. And they'll say, well, my sugar was high and my doctor told me I had to take this medicine. And since then, my sugar numbers have been good. So I'm healthy. I'm good. This person is in real trouble down the road. So if that's you, you need to get interested. You really need to take command of your health care. The days of just relying on whatever the healthcare system offers and hoping that bails you out, those days have really long passed us. Remember, Cambodia outlives us. This is why, guys, is because we're all just too busy. We really need to change our attitude whenever it comes to taking care of our health. And so at the workshop next Thursday night called 4 Secrets to Beating Diabetes, I'm going to give you a very in-depth explanation of what's happening inside your body. And it's really hard to do here on the radio. You know, Brandon, I figured out that charts and graphs and visual aids just don't work on the air.
No.
And so it's hard enough for me to sit down and explain to you what's going on inside your body when I have your attention at a workshop where I can show you slides of cells and what those cells are doing and how the insulin works with the cellular function. You know, that's hard enough for me to get you to understand when you're sitting right in front of me. There's no way I could explain it on the radio. So, you know, that's why this workshop is going to be such a cool thing for you. So if you want to come to that, it's 837-7174 to call and register. It's going to be next Thursday at 7 p.m. Now, get this. I'm going to give everybody that comes a $200 certificate for a diabetes screening inside my office to sit down with me personally to see what might be causing your particular diabetes and what you could do to try to get rid of it, because everybody's a little different. You know, what you have wrong might be different than what the next person has wrong. So I'm going to give everybody that comes a $200 certificate to actually come in and sit down with me for a complete diabetes screening personally in my office to see if I can help you. So stay tuned right after this. This is Dr. Kevin, and you're listening to Get Well Acadiana.
Like Dr. Kevin on Facebook by searching Bryant Wellness Institute's Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
All right, welcome back to Get Well Acadiana. This is Dr. Kevin. Before we continue, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, Brandon, to everybody before the break. When we were talking about things that I can't show you on the air, you're going to be fascinated by this, but I have some live blood slides that I'm going to show you at the workshop where you will be able to physically see what cells do when they're working and they're not working. It's going to really blow your mind. I'm going to show you. I can show you live blood cells, and I have slide after slide where I'm going to show you what cells look like that are healthy and functional and what cells look like that are not healthy and functional. And so you're going to leave there with the best understanding of what's going on in your body. The truth is, you may leave there knowing more than what some health professionals know about what your cells are actually doing and why, because I'm going to show you exactly what to look for on live blood to show you what your cells look like when they're healthy and what they look like when they're not healthy. So just wanted to mention that because that's going to be one of the most fascinating things that I'm going to be able to show the people that come to the workshop Thursday night. Now, before break, we were discussing the ridiculous amounts of sugar that Americans eat every year, 180 pounds of sugar. So I want you to think about this. The average American eats 7 times too many carbohydrates in their diet. Now, carbohydrates are the sugars. So think about this. When you go out to eat, the first thing to hit the table, soda, beer, sweet tea, carb, carb, carb. Then they bring your bread, carb. Then they bring your salad, carb. Then they bring your entree with rice, carb, and another vegetable, carb, and 1 protein. And then you save room for another beer, carb, or a sweet tea, carb. Or dessert, carb. So you can see how out of balance that is. No wonder, that we have so many sugar problems. The average American, 7 times too many carbohydrates in our diet. And, it's no wonder that diabetes rates are now the highest they have ever been in the history of mankind. So before break, we came to the conclusion that diabetes is rampant in America and that something has to be done now to solve this. And in this segment, I wanted to discuss the differences in the types of diabetes because sometimes people get a little confused by that. Now, mostly what we've been discussing when we discuss eating sugar and then developing diabetes over your lifetime and being overweight and giving yourself diabetes, we're mostly discussing type 2 diabetes with that, which, by the way, type 2 diabetes actually used to be called adult onset diabetes. But now so many kids and teenagers are getting it. I know this is a shame, but they had to change the name from adult onset diabetes to type 2. Now, the other type of diabetes is type 1 diabetes, and that's when the body's own immune system is attacking and killing the pancreas cells so that the body's not making enough insulin to put the sugar inside the cell. And it's kind of the opposite. In type 1 diabetes, there's not enough insulin in the body to put the sugar inside the cell for use. In type 2, there's a lot of insulin. In fact, there's too much, but the cells just aren't using it. The cells have lost their ability to use their insulin. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. That means that the body's own immune system has decided to attack and kill the cells that make insulin. So there's not enough insulin to put sugar inside the cell. Now, autoimmune diseases, I wanted to go off the subject just for a second because this is important. Autoimmune diseases are by far one of the biggest concerns in modern medicine. They're getting more and more common and more dangerous all the time. The truth is, our bodies can't even figure out what cells are us and not us anymore. Our immune systems can't even figure out when to attack and kill a cell and when a cell is our own and it shouldn't be attacking itself. And so our bodies are getting so confused. Now, I want you to think about this. So everybody knows that the top 2 killers are cancer and heart disease. Now, if we grouped autoimmune diseases in one category like they do cancer, it would be so far ahead of everything else, it would blow your mind. So in other words, think about this. If we broke cancer down to bone cancer, skin cancer, lung cancer, blood cancer, it would be way down the line. They break autoimmune diseases down to lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, MS, Hashimoto's disease, type 1 diabetes. So it doesn't even show up on the radar. But if they grouped all that together like they do cancer, it would be by far the most common diseases in America.
So how do autoimmune diseases happen? I mean, are some people born with them? Do they develop over time? How does that work?
Well, there's not really any set reason that they know of exactly, but that's kind of a big point of debate.
Yeah.
In functional medicine, the big thing that we do when it comes to autoimmune diseases is, an example is someone has Hashimoto's where the immune system has attacked the thyroid. And you go to the doctor for that, and they say, okay, you have thyroid disease, you need to take this Synthroid. Or they'll say, okay, you have MS or you have lupus. That is a disease. They don't ever really pay attention that, hey, your immune system's what's attacking you here. So with type 1 diabetes or with Hashimoto's disease, we look at the immune system. We don't worry about the end result. The thyroid's the victim.
Yeah.
The insulin cells are the victim. So to add insulin is kind of like a Band-Aid. So what we do in this is try to find out why the immune system has gone crazy and is killing the wrong cells. So with the treatment of autoimmune, we ask the question, why has this happened? Why has the immune system decided to go haywire and start to kill itself? And how can we get the immune system to calm down? So insulin is a Band-Aid. Synthroid is a Band-Aid. That's treating the victim, meaning that's treating the thyroid, that's treating the insulin cells. That's never even getting to the immune system and why the immune system is going crazy and attacking itself. So autoimmune diseases are one of those things that our functional medicine program addresses, and we're going to get into autoimmune disease. I have a whole show coming up on autoimmune diseases where we're going to dive into this really big. But, Brandon, to answer your question a little more in detail, it's not really something that you're born with. But also in the medical field, they don't really look at it as there's any solution for it either.
Right.
It's your immune system's attacking your thyroid. You have Hashimoto's disease. You're doomed to take this Synthroid your whole life. Or your immune system has attacked your pancreas cells, and so you're going to have an insulin pump, and we're just going to pump insulin in your body. And usually type 1 is something that you find that as a very young child or as something you're kind of quote unquote born with.
Right.
But again, why is the immune system doing that? And is there anything we can do in the body to make it stop doing that?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where wellness and functional medicine differs from traditional medicine is, let's look at the immune system and see if there's anything we can do to make it stop doing that instead of just sort of patching up the disease day after day. But type 2 is completely the opposite. With type 2, there's enough insulin. In fact, there's too much, but the body just has stopped using it. And so the key here is to ask, why are the cells not utilizing their insulin, and how can we get the cells to start utilizing their insulin again? Now, all metformin does is it just whips the pancreas to make more insulin. So imagine this. The cells already aren't utilizing their insulin good. So metformin just floods the body with so much insulin that it's like it kicks the door open and it forces the sugar inside the cell for use. And listen, there's no doubt it will bring your blood sugar down. It will work for that. But the problem is, too much insulin is toxic to the human body. And guess what? We don't even test for insulin on regular blood work when it comes to diabetes. So can you imagine, as important as insulin is in the management of diabetes, we don't even regularly test for that? That is not okay. Diabetes is a disease of insulin, and we have to start looking at that instead of just blood sugar and A1C, which, by the way, A1C is just blood sugar over time. So both of those markers both address blood sugar. Nothing addresses insulin. And so we're looking at all the wrong stuff. And I have another hormone for you that we need to look at in the management of diabetes called leptin. Leptin is insulin's boss, and we need to check leptin. So leptin is what controls the production of insulin in your body, and insulin is what manages blood sugar. So anytime in functional medicine we're looking at some of these disease processes, we want to get what we call as far upstream as possible in the body. So in other words, blood sugar is way downstream in the management of diabetes. In Hashimoto's disease, where the immune system has attacked the thyroid, Synthroid is way downstream in the management of Hashimoto's disease. And so insulin is way downstream in the management of type 1 diabetes. So in functional medicine and wellness, we want to get as far upstream in the body where we actually get to figuring out why are the cells doing what they're doing. And again, how can we make the cells respond different? So the number one way that we can control leptin production, which again, leptin controls insulin, but dietary changes are the number one way that we can control how leptin is produced in your body. Now, sometimes when patients hear dietary changes, they run for the door. Dietary changes done the way we do it is actually fun and tasty. Our diet program called the Leptin Diet is loaded with healthy fats, and they're very filling and satisfying, loaded with great foods, full of flavor. They keep you full for a long time. I'll show you the perfect eating schedule and the perfect food calendar on timing and food choices at the workshop for the diabetic patient. And so we have a whole section at the workshop we're going to get into whenever we talk about dietary changes and ways that you can do that. So when you hear dietary changes, don't run for the door. It's okay. I'm a certified weight loss coach. I can show you recipes and different food items to show you how your nutrition can be done to where it's not that difficult. And our diet is full of great foods and full of flavor. And I actually post on our Facebook page at the Bryant Wellness Institute lots of my meal plans and lots of recipes. And when I'm in my kitchen preparing foods, a lot of times I'll take pictures of those and join them with our Facebook listeners. So, get onto our Facebook page at the Bryant Wellness Institute. And by the way, speaking of that, I'll also do a Thursday show there called Dr. Kevin Live and online at Thursdays at noon. So go right now and like our Facebook page. We're always posting tons of great information on there. But at the diabetes workshop, I'm going to show you tons of great information that you can do, little things you can do at home to solve your diabetes. But we have to begin to look at the right numbers if we're going to solve diabetes. Our in-house blood panel on diabetes, we check insulin, we check leptin, we check fructosamine, A1C, we check all the building blocks of all those hormones, we check all the inflammatory factors, we check all the cellular functioning markers and cortisol and stress glands. And so our blood panel, when it comes to diabetes, is pages and pages of information. And what that does is it allows us to create a clearer picture of why your body is doing what it's doing, not just what it's doing, but why. And we always want to ask that question, why is this happening? It's not good enough just to force your body to make more insulin. That can lead to all sorts of disorders down the road, even brain issues. One of the things that always surprises me that how many connections Alzheimer's disease and diabetes are. And they're actually starting to call Alzheimer's diabetes of the brain, because Alzheimer's and dementia is now been directly correlated through research. And I have a ton of research on this, but it's been directly correlated to how your brain processes sugar. And keep in mind, insulin, like I've said, insulin is toxic in high numbers in humans. Now get this, according to studies, Brandon, this amazes me. According to studies, people with diabetes have a 2 times greater risk of developing Alzheimer's. But if you take insulin or you take diabetic medicine, meaning your insulin is higher, your risk of Alzheimer's goes up 4 times. So you have a 4 times greater risk of developing Alzheimer's if you take diabetic medicine or insulin. Why? Because insulin is toxic in too high of numbers in humans. So whipping your body to make more insulin and forcing your blood sugar numbers into this box is not the best solution. So in functional medicine, we want to say, why have your cells become resistant to insulin? Why is your body not processing its sugar properly? And how can we get the process to start to work better? And as it turns out, the answer is lots of things. There's lots of things we can do, from nutraceuticals to new technologies to dietary changes. Lots of things we can do to try to get your cells to start to process their insulin better. So diabetes is not a life sentence, guys. You're not doomed to suffer all of these amputations and blindness and diabetic neuropathies and all these things that we talked about earlier in the show. You're not doomed to suffer with these things. So you're listening to Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin. Call and register for our 4 Secrets to Beat Diabetes workshop next Thursday night at 7. You can call my office at 837-7174 and leave your name and number. And when we get back in the office Monday, we'll call you and give you more information on it. That number again is 837-7174. This workshop is going to be the most valuable 1 hour you have ever spent whenever it comes to your health. Plus, each participant will be given a $200 certificate for a diabetes wellness screening with me, which, by the way, even if you don't have diabetes and you don't think you have prediabetes, let's just say that you need a little help losing weight, or you've tried to lose weight and it's been difficult, or let's say you crave sweets, or let's say you feel a little bit tired or a little bit fatigued after you eat, or say after lunch you always get sleepy. That's an indication that your body's not processing its insulin correctly and you're developing blood sugar problems and prediabetes type problems. So even if that's you, but you don't know that you have diabetes or you've tried to lose weight and had trouble, you still want to come. So call the office at 837-7174 and book your spot. That's 837-7174. This is Get Well Acadiana, and I'm Dr. Kevin.
Answering your questions every Saturday morning. Get Well Acadiana with Dr. Kevin.
Welcome back to Get Well Acadiana. I'm Dr. Kevin. We're discussing diabetes today. And before the break, we were discussing that there's so much more to the story than what is being addressed in the traditional treatment of diabetes. Now, the very last topic that I wanted to leave you with today, one last thing that we always look at that could be causing your health problems. And remember, in functional medicine, we want to look for the causes and attempt to get as far upstream in the body as possible. But the one last thing that I wanted to leave you with today is what we call external causes. External causes are things that could be happening to your body that's from something outside your body that you've been exposed to that is causing your disease. Now, last week, the external cause that I went over with you was environmental chemicals. Brandon, you remember that? We talked about environmental chemicals, and we listed 4 of those that cause diabetes. The external cause this week that I wanted to leave you with that we always check is stress. Now, everybody you talk to, you say, hey, are you stressed out? Oh, I'm so stressed out. And stress was designed to be a very temporary, short-term event in our bodies. Now, if you back us up all the way to our hunter-gatherer days, stress was more like a predator chasing us. It lasted a few minutes. And guess what? If a predator was chasing us, we were either going to get away and fight him off or not. And if not, it didn't really matter, did it? And so our body developed this mechanism called fight or flight response so that we could get out of this stressful situation so that we could survive. Now, this is a reflex. It doesn't matter what's happening in your body. If you're sitting in traffic and late, or if someone's breaking into your house, your response to your body is physiologically exactly the same. Fight or flight response. Now, when we go into fight or flight response, the body goes through physiological changes that you cannot keep it from happening. The first one is our blood pressure goes up so that we can fight or we can turn and run. So if I'm in fight or flight, my body needs to either fight or run, and I need a lot of blood pressure, so the blood pressure goes up. The second thing is our digestion stops. My body is going to convert the blood from my digestive system to my arms and legs so I can either fight or run. So my digestion shuts down. The third thing is my sleep is disturbed. I'm not going to be in the middle of an emergency event and fall asleep. And then the fourth thing is my body produces an extra hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is anti-inflammatory, which is great for emergencies. But if it's produced over and over, it becomes a weight-storing hormone and causes insulin surge. And so stress can cause your insulin balance to be off, and that's something that we need to look at. Now, I have a very simple, non-invasive test where we do your sitting, standing blood pressure, which should go up your blood pressure should go up 5 points. And if it doesn't, that means that you have stress burnout, or what we call adrenal fatigue. And so we'll discuss that at the workshop. I'm going to show you a lot more about all of these different aspects of diabetes. The workshop is going to be called 4 Secrets to Beating Diabetes. You can call and register at 837-7174. We do have limited seating, so call and leave your name. It's 837-7174. And join me on Facebook at the Bryant Wellness Institutes. I have a Thursday show there at noon called Dr. Kevin Live and Online. You can ask questions and join in. So thank you all very much for listening today. You know, my purpose for doing this show is to try to change some lives, and I hope that I'm doing that. Have a good weekend. Catch our show next week. Catch Brandon's show at 4 o'clock weekdays. Email me at drkevin@bryantwellnessinstitutes.com. Join us on Facebook at the Bryant Wellness Institutes. We're going to shift gears to a new subject next week, so make sure you tune in. This is Dr. Kevin. You've been listening to Get Well Acadiana. Brandon, have a good weekend. See you next week. Have a good week, guys.
More information from Dr. Kevin at bryantwellnessinstitutes.com.